My in-laws banned me from Christmas, so I sent them dollar store gifts.
Ho, ho, no.
Throwaway account for anonymity. I, 31 female, married my soon-to-be ex-husband, male 33, in 2018. My in-laws never liked me and made it clear my soon-to-be ex insisted that they're just putting up a tough exterior and that they'll grow to love me. And by the way, this comes from user potential low 8645. And if you want to submit your own stories, where do you go? The r/OK Storytime subreddit, of course, to show how evil they are. One time I joined them for dinner and brought a cake I had made because I always raised to be a gracious guest. And when I stepped into the kitchen and offered the cake to his mother as a thank you for inviting me, she took the plate over to the garbage bin, dumped it in, and handed me the plate back. When I told my husband what she did, he confronted her, and all of a sudden the crocodile tears started as she claimed she grabbed the plate but didn't get a good grip. I let go too quickly and it fell to the floor, so of course it had to be thrown away. My sister-in-law confirmed that was what happened. My soon-to-be ex owned his own business, and they called me a gold digger behind his back. Of course, they insisted on prenup, which I didn't care about because I never thought my marriage would end, and it would appease them and may allow them to finally treat me kindly. Nope. His business failed once the vid hit. We went through his savings and my own trying to keep it afloat. I refused to go into debt to keep it going, so he closed it down. In 2022, he was suffering from really bad depression because he lost his business and couldn't find any new work. He suggested we move to his hometown, closer to his family, so he had a larger support network. Against my best judgment, we did. He wanted to only work part-time while he trained to restart his business, so I became the main breadwinner. And as with most wives, I became the person in charge of buying gifts. Stupid old me thought that buying them thoughtful, expensive gifts would finally make them see I wanted to be accepted by them. Gifts to us were a couple's gift, but clearly for my soon-to-be ex only. Every holiday was spent with them. Monthly dinners with the whole family. After a year, I realized that if I ever tried to talk or join a conversation, everyone would go quiet. So I just stopped talking when I visited. In early December, they finalized plans for Christmas. A few days later, my soon-to-be ex said his family decided they didn't want me to join them for Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas lunch because I ruined the family vibe. I replied, fine, we'll do our own thing instead. My soon-to-be ex sheepishly looked away and said he was still going to go. I was livid and so disappointed in him. That was the moment I knew my marriage was over.
Yes.
So I returned the presents I had bought for his family. In their place, I got one pair of novelty business socks for father-in-law, a supermarket brand bottle of shampoo for mother-in-law, and the nastiest, stinkiest perfume I could find at the dollar store for sister-in-law. The most expensive gift was a large rawhide bone for brother-in-law and his wife's chihuahua, too big for it to get its jaw around, rendering it useless. I saved about $600 to put on a deposit for a new apartment. My husband came home from Christmas lunch telling me I humiliated him and embarrassed him in front of his family. I asked him why would he think I'd buy nice gifts for people who clearly don't like me and don't want me around. Served divorce papers last week. Remember how he was supposed to be a millionaire by now, so we had that prenup? Soon-to-be ex is not eligible for any of my savings. It was required to keep separate accounts. And he's not eligible for alimony. He doesn't have money for rent and auto insurance. Not my problem anymore.
Yeah.
Some of my friends and family, and on my side, are proud that I went out in a blaze of glory. Others are telling me that I was being way too petty, which isn't really like me. So am I the a-hole? Anybody telling you that you're being too petty? Look, I only advocate not being like petty or like seeking vengeance for our own peace.
Yes.
Our own peace. So here's some comments, OP's responses. Commenter says, I would say, be glad you did not have children with him. Yeah, you could say that again. Be glad you can escape and be free with no strings. P.S. This relationship should be a learning lesson on the love that you want for yourself and the life you want, not as a loss. OP responds, first thing I did after I moved into my new apartment was adopt an older cat. I adopted Lightning McQueen from the shelter.
Ciao.
That's great.
He was allergic and I couldn't ever adopt one since we first started living together. We're just two old hags living our best lives after being rejected. I wouldn't even even say you were rejected. I'd say that you like woke up and realized that you didn't want to be with somebody who literally has jellyfish spine.
Yeah, you rejected him as he so deserves.
Yeah,
so deserved.
That person has no business being in your life. Commenter says, "You're not old, silly. So glad you're enjoying the company of an older cat. Car is interesting, but not as cuddly. Your kitty friend will appreciate you and will show far more than your soon-to-be ex ever did. Don't just notice the typo," says OP, keeping it in because it's actually hilarious. Commenter says, "Not the a-hole. He chose his family over you and still expected you to buy all the presents. This was perfectly planned and well-deserved for every one of them, including him." OP says he only worked 12 hours a week at Walmart so he could do non-existent work restarting his business. "I made just over 6 figures and I can't believe I didn't realize years ago I was the family ATM." Commenter, "Not the a-hole. So thoughtful of them to insist on a prenup. I hope you send them a sincere thank you note after the divorce is finalized."
For real.
OP says, "My lawyer even laughed at that prenup that was set up for him is going to be what we use for me. It required both spouses to maintain separate bank accounts and each spouse could keep 100% of their savings. No spouse eligible for alimony."
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Update. Many thanks to everyone for their support in my last post. I thought I'd send a small update. First, for those who asked how the deposit on my new apartment was only the $600 I saved on the gifts, it certainly wasn't. I had to dip into savings, but that $600 helped. My soon-to-be ex didn't bother reaching out to me after I left until he was served the divorce papers, and my lawyer made it clear we're exercising the prenup. Then it was loving voicemails and texts I never picked up from him and his family for a few days trying to convince me to come back, which eventually turned into threatening and cruel voicemails and texts when it was clear that I wasn't going to budge. My lawyer suggested I don't block them so we have evidence of harassment if needed. Basically, give them the rope so that they can make their own fate with this object.
Nice.
But then last night, I got a call after call from my soon-to-be ex. I stupidly picked it up, thinking that there was some kind of emergency. I barely got hello out when he said, "The rent is a week late." I told him that's strange because I paid my landlord 6 days ago. Nice!
Hey.
He paused and sighed dramatically and replied, "No, the rent for here, where I live." I reminded him I don't live there.
Ooh.
And he shouldn't expect rent. Cue his parents both texting me that they're going to sue me to pay the remainder of the lease entirely. I'm not worried about having an eviction on my record since the apartment is in his parents' names. When we first announced we were moving to his hometown, they rented an apartment for us right away so we could move right in. They've been renewing the lease each year. We had to pay his parents, and then they write a check to the landlord who has no idea who soon-to-be ex and I are, let alone that we live there.
Dude, I love how the parents set themselves. They're the ones that pushed the prenup. They're the ones that did this lease. They dug their own grave, and I love it.
The parents were like just completely set themselves up for maximum failure. Red flag, I know. I'm glad I had a few weeks to prep my leaving since they'd probably use the fact that it's their apartment to punt me out immediately. And by the way, I want to like drop back and pass you all the way over to a place where you can listen to full episodes with stories like this. And it's Spotify, it's iHeartRadio, it's Apple Podcasts, it's wherever you get your podcasts from. Just search OK Storytime and you will find what is now 49 consecutive days worth of stories to listen to your heart's content.
And that's a touchdown.
And that right there is a touchdown. In fact, I'm going to call that 2 touchdowns. And there's a little bit of story left here, so let's finish it off. Divorce is probably going to be a bumpy ride with this man-child and his psycho parents. Any advice from anyone who's been through it is welcome. And we have some comments from OP here. Commenter says, "Do you even have a contract at the place your soon-to-be ex is living? I don't think they have a basis for suing you. What does your lawyer say?" Yeah, and OP says, "Lawyer is confident. They don't have any legs to stand on. I haven't signed any type of lease and utilities are in their name too because they were afraid of having too many names connected to the apartment and the landlord finding out. So they are on the hook for everything that doesn't get paid. But hey, it was their choice and they're scheming. F around and find out."
Boom.
Boom.
Fafo.
And that FAFO is the end of that story.
Ooh,
They leave it on a good, nice little FAFO right there.
That's right. We love a good Fafo to end it off on.
That's true.